The morning air hung heavy over the estate as 10-year-old Marcus Webb stood motionless before an ornate casket draped in ivory roses. Around him, the world's elite gathered in designer mourning clothes, politicians, industry titans, celebrities, all waiting to say their final goodbyes to the man inside. But Marcus wasn't mourning. His fingers clutched a small device that told a different story than the one everyone believed. His father, the brilliant self-made billionaire James Webb, had made him a solemn vow just weeks ago. "If I ever have to leave this world, son, I'll make sure you know. I'll never abandon you without a word." And James Webb hadn't said goodbye. The priest stepped forward, preparing to seal the casket forever. In moments, it would be lowered into the earth, and whatever truth lay inside would be buried with it. Marcus felt his heart pounding against his ribs. This was the moment, his last chance to honor his intuition, or watch his father disappear forever. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. James Webb had become a legend in his own lifetime. Born into poverty in the outskirts of town, he'd grown up watching his mother work 3 jobs just to keep food on their table. By candlelight, young James studied worn textbooks, dreaming of a different life, not just for himself, but for everyone struggling like his family did. 4 decades of relentless work transformed that dream into Webb Industries, a global empire that built community centers, funded hospitals, and created opportunities for thousands. James didn't just make money, he made meaning. The press called him generous. His employees called him fair. The city called him irreplaceable. But 5 years earlier, tragedy had struck. His wife Rebecca died in an accident that left James shattered, and their young son Marcus without a mother. In his grief, James threw himself deeper into work, traveling constantly, closing deals, expanding his reach, as if staying busy could outrun the pain. Yet every morning at 7 o'clock sharp, no matter what continent he was on, James made time for breakfast with Marcus. And every night at 8, he sat on the edge of his son's bed, sharing stories until sleep came peacefully. These rituals were sacred. They were promises made without words. Until 3 months ago, when everything changed. Marcus noticed it first at breakfast. His father's chair sat empty. In 5 years, through business crises and international trips, James had never once missed their morning ritual. The boy found him upstairs, pale and trembling, clutching his chest as waves of pain washed over him. The transformation was startling. This was a man who ran marathons, who radiated strength and confidence. Now he looked fragile, almost transparent in the morning light. Dr. Morrison arrived within the hour, his expression growing graver as the examination continued. "His cardiovascular system is failing," the elderly physician murmured to the household staff. "I don't understand why. We'll need extensive testing." Over the following weeks, James deteriorated rapidly. A private nurse, a soft-spoken woman named Claire, came daily to administer medications and monitor his vital signs. Marcus watched his father fade like a photograph left too long in sunlight, growing dimmer and less substantial with each passing day. And then there was Uncle Richard. Richard Webb was James's younger brother, vice president of Webb Industries, and the person Marcus trusted least in the world. Richard was polished and charming, always arriving with expensive gifts and practiced smiles. But Marcus had learned from his mother to trust feelings over appearances. And everything about Uncle Richard felt wrong, like fruit that looked perfect but tasted of rot. With James bedridden, Richard assumed control of the company. He visited constantly, always carrying documents that needed signatures, speaking in hushed tones about transferring authority and temporary measures. After these visits, James always seemed more exhausted, more defeated. Marcus began to notice patterns. The way Richard's eyes lingered on valuable possessions. The way he spoke about the company's future as if it were already his. The way Claire, the nurse, would leave rooms quickly whenever Richard appeared, fear flickering across her face. One evening, Marcus overheard a phone conversation that made his blood run cold. Richard stood in the garden, voice low but intense. "Everything's proceeding exactly as planned. The funeral is scheduled for Saturday, 3 days. By Monday, I'll control everything. The board, the assets, the legacy. Yes, I'm certain. No one suspects a thing. If you're still watching, take a second to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you powerful stories every week. The night it happened, Marcus was reading when he heard Claire's scream pierce through the house. He ran to find her bent over his father, checking for breath, for pulse, for any sign of life. "Call emergency services," she shouted, her hands shaking as she performed compressions. "He's not responding." Richard appeared in the doorway with remarkable speed, as if he'd been waiting nearby. "Marcus, you shouldn't be here," he said, guiding the boy away with firm hands. "Let the professionals work." But Marcus had seen something in his uncle's eyes, not shock or grief, but something else entirely, something that looked almost like satisfaction. The ambulance came. The paramedics worked frantically. Then they carried James Webb out on a stretcher, and Richard left to follow them to the hospital. Marcus waited through the longest night of his life, staring at his father's empty chair at the breakfast table, remembering every morning they'd shared there. Richard returned as dawn broke, his face composed in an expression of manufactured sorrow. "I'm sorry, Marcus. Your father's gone." His heart gave out. The doctors did everything possible, but... He reached for the boy's shoulder. "I'll take care of you now. Your family." Marcus pulled away. "You're lying." He promised he wouldn't leave without saying goodbye. He promised. "Sometimes," Richard said softly, "circumstances make promises impossible to keep." But Marcus knew better. His mother's words echoed in his mind. "Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is." The funeral was arranged with suspicious speed. "This Saturday," Richard told the funeral director firmly. "My brother was prominent. The world is waiting. Closed casket. The family wants privacy." Saturday. That was only 72 hours away. Marcus remembered when his mother died. The planning took weeks. Proper arrangements took time. So why was Richard rushing? His father's assistant, Miss Thompson, shared his concerns. "Claire disappeared," she told Marcus quietly. "Her apartment is empty. Her phone's disconnected. It's like she vanished into thin air." A woman who'd cared for James faithfully for months wouldn't simply abandon him, not unless someone forced her to disappear. Marcus confided in his teacher, Mrs. Patterson, a wise woman who'd known the family for years. She listened carefully to his suspicions, watching the certainty in his young eyes. "I know someone," she finally said. "A detective named Sullivan. He's honest and thorough. Would you speak with him?" Detective Sullivan met them at a quiet coffee shop, his weathered face thoughtful as Marcus laid out everything. The rapid decline, the rushed funeral, the missing nurse, Richard's suspicious behavior. "Your father helped me once," Sullivan said slowly. "He exposed corruption in a charity case I was investigating. If there's any chance someone harmed him, I owe it to his memory to find out." "So you believe me?" "I believe in following evidence, wherever it leads." Marcus remembered something crucial. "My father wore a fitness tracker. It monitors heart rate, activity, everything. He took it off when he got too weak to wear it, but it should still have data from that night." Sullivan's eyes sharpened with interest. "Can you access it?" That night, Marcus crept through the dark house to his father's study. The tracker sat on the desk, its screen dark. He pressed the power button with trembling fingers, and data flooded the display. The timeline told a haunting story. At 8:30 p.m., James's heart rate had spiked dramatically to 165 beats per minute. Then, over the next 30 minutes, it had plummeted 48, 35, 28, 22. But here was what stopped Marcus's breath. After the supposed moment of death, faint readings continued. 18 beats per minute at 8:50, 15 at 8:55, 12 at 9 o'clock. The device had detected something, weak, barely there, but present, for more than 20 minutes after James was declared dead. A truly stopped heart produces no readings at all. Marcus copied the data and got it to Detective Sullivan, who immediately contacted a medical examiner friend. "This pattern is consistent with certain cardiac suppressing drugs," the examiner explained. "They slow the heart to near imperceptible levels, creating the appearance of death. But the person might still be alive, barely, but alive." Sullivan obtained a court order and rushed to the hospital, demanding James Webb's sealed medical records. What he found was damning. Among the prescribed medications was an obscure compound rarely seen outside surgical settings, one that slowed all vital signs to a death-like state. The drug was undetectable after a few days, perfect for making murder look natural. If the body was kept cool, the medical examiner said carefully, and if it's only been 3 days, there's a slim possibility that he's still alive, Sullivan finished. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in gray clouds. Marcus dressed in the black suit laid out for him, his father's fitness tracker hidden in his pocket like a talisman. The estate had been transformed. Thousands of white flowers, news cameras everywhere, hundreds of seats filled with the powerful and famous. At the front, beneath a crystalline canopy, sat the casket that held his father. Richard moved through the crowd like a gracious host, accepting condolences, his performance flawless. When the service began, he delivered a eulogy so moving that several people wept. He spoke of James's legacy, his generosity, his vision, and how Richard would honor that legacy by leading the company forward. Marcus sat in the front row, watching his uncle claim everything his father had built, and felt rage mixed with terror. Where was Detective Sullivan? He'd promised to be here. As the priest stepped forward to close the casket for the final time, Marcus's aunt, his father's sister Patricia, stood abruptly. "I can't stay silent anymore," she announced. "This funeral was rushed. The medical records are sealed. There was no autopsy. Something isn't right, Richard, and you know it." "You're grieving," Richard said smoothly. "We all are. Please, let's not." "No." And then Marcus stood too, his young voice cutting through the murmurs. "We can't bury him, because he's not dead." The crowd erupted. Richard's face went white, then red. "Marcus, sit down. You're confused." "I'm not confused." Marcus pulled out the fitness tracker, holding it high. "This shows his heart didn't stop. It slowed down. Someone gave him something. Someone made him seem dead. Someone." "Stand aside." Detective Sullivan burst through the crowd, court order raised. "This burial is suspended pending investigation." Richard tried to intercept him, but officers moved to block the way. Sullivan approached the casket and looked at the funeral director. "Open it. Now." The man's hand shook as he lifted the lid. James Webb lay inside, perfectly still, his skin pale as marble. For a terrible moment, Marcus thought he'd been wrong, that his father truly was gone, and he'd just made a devastating scene. Then Sullivan pressed fingers to James's neck, checking for a pulse. His eyes widened. "Get a medical team here immediately. I'm detecting cardiac activity." A doctor rushed forward with equipment, attaching monitors to James's chest. The heart rate monitor emitted a slow, irregular beep. 8 beats per minute, barely enough to sustain life, but it was there. "He's alive," the doctor breathed. "We need to transport him now. Every second counts." The crowd exploded into chaos as paramedics surrounded the casket, working frantically. Richard tried to slip away in the confusion, but Sullivan was ready. "Officers, arrest that man." As Richard was handcuffed, Sullivan pulled a syringe from Richard's jacket pocket. "Planning to finish the job if your plan failed?" Richard's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. "He didn't deserve it," he hissed. "Everything always went to James. The company, the respect, the legacy. I worked just as hard. I was just as capable. But I was always second place, always in his shadow." "So you tried to bury your brother alive," Sullivan said coldly. Marcus barely heard any of it. He was in the ambulance with his father, holding a cold hand, whispering, "I found you, Dad, just like I promised. Now you have to fight. You have to come back." And as the ambulance raced toward the hospital, Marcus felt it, the faintest pressure as his father's fingers squeezed back. 6 months later, the Webb estate garden bloomed with new life. Where the funeral had nearly taken place, a magnificent tree now grew, planted in celebration of second chances. At its base sat a smooth stone marker, deliberately blank, empty of any name or date. James and Marcus walked together through the garden, father and son reunited against impossible odds. They paused beneath the tree, and Marcus traced his fingers over the blank stone. Why is it empty? He asked. James smiled. Because this was meant to be my gravestone. My name should be carved here. But instead, it's blank. A reminder that sometimes the story we expect isn't the one that gets written. Love and Truth wrote a different ending. They sat on a bench as the sunset painted the sky gold. Did you hear me? Marcus asked quietly. At the funeral, when I said you weren't dead, did you hear me? Yes, James said, his voice thick with emotion. I was trapped somewhere dark and distant, unable to move or respond. But your voice cut through everything, clear and certain and strong. It gave me something to hold on to, a reason to keep fighting. That morning, they'd announced the Webb Foundation, $500 million dedicated to helping children who'd lost parents to violence or crime. Because Marcus had learned something profound. Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about trusting what you know to be true, even when the whole world doubts you. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the most important message. Sometimes a child sees clearly what adults have trained themselves to overlook. And sometimes, with enough love and determination, death itself can be defeated by 3 simple words. He's not dead. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments what part spoke to you the most. And if you thought this one was powerful, wait till you hear the next story we're working on. The blank gravestone remains there still, a monument not to an ending, but to a new beginning. A reminder that the most powerful force in this world isn't money or power or fame. It's the love between a father and son who refuse to say goodbye.